On this week's full-time roundup, Bayer keep their unbeaten streak alive, Jude spoils a Clasico for Barcelona, Inter officially lift the Scudetto, and of course, we end with predictions. Full-time roundup starts right now. Welcome in, everyone. It is another edition of the Full-Time Roundup podcast. It is me, Daniel Brackett, a co-host, and joining alongside me, long-lost friend, Matthew Geslin. Matthew, are you as happy to see me as I am to see you?
I am so happy to see you. It's been forever. Thank you for holding the fort down it feels like months at this point. It's been consistently me being out. I was moving these past couple of weeks, but you, John, Ewan, thank you to the whole Harrison, to the whole crew for holding it down. So good to be back. Yes, it is good to see you and good to talk some football because we got plenty to talk about.
We certainly do, and if you hear the outside music, it's because we are posted up at Braswell's Pub in, Elizabeth area?
No, this is Montford.
Montford. I wouldn't
Sorry,
know that.
You wouldn't know that. No,
I'm
it's okay.
I'm not a local over here, but we officially just moved Matt out. He's, it's been such a long time since we podcast together. He actually got an apartment 100 feet down the road from me, so that's an interesting development that we'll keep you updated on. But alas, let's jump right into some Premier League action here. And we'll start out first with Arsenal bouncing back after a tough UCL campaign. They slipped up against Aston Villa, and they went on the road and beat Wolves 2-0. Pretty ho-hum performance, but did you see anything out of that game that intrigued you?
Well, I think you have to take into account that anytime you go to Molineux, it's a tough place to play. Wolves, historically at home, are always difficult. Gary O'Neil has done a fantastic job with that team, which we've talked about. There were some things that you kind of were concerned about, the form that they're still in. Of course, they were, blitzing people the last couple of weeks, and then I think it all started to change a little bit when the first game in Porto kind of was a little bit of a stumbling block, right? And after that, they had another bad performance against Porto at home. And of course, everything that happened against Bayern Munich and a really flat performance at the Allianz. And you really expect them to bounce back and maybe put in 4 or 5 goals in this game, but it just didn't happen for them. They did get the win. They move on. You kind of get 3 points and take it for what it's worth. And you stay in the race with that 3 points. But I was expecting a little bit more from this Arsenal side, and it still felt a little flat for me, which is a concern if you're looking at the rest of the season. But again, like I said, Molineux is definitely a tough place to play.
Yeah, I have to agree. And, who opened the scoring? Leandro Trossard, one of the most, important figures in Arsenal's men in terms of winning the title and going far this year, just because, this guy's been lethal off the bench. He's gotten big goals on big occasions. And he's kind of stepping up for another guy who's, one of the most highly touted English players, Bukayo Saka, just not looking himself. And he did, kind of create that last Odegaard goal, so I'll give him credit for that. But, once we see those flashes consistently of, brilliant play, we like to see it quite a bit. And I feel like this season he's just not been at his best. And I'd like to see a little bit more, and he's the pivotal guy if you want to go on and win the Premier League. Yeah,
you wonder if the amount of minutes he's playing is starting to take a toll,
and the
right?
Injuries and the
fouls, the little fouls
and
and knocks he gets every game, and it feels
win.
like everyone is after him week in, week out, and so you wonder if that's starting to take its toll. But again, like we said, at the end of the day, they get 3 points and they stay in the race, and that's kind of what you expect from this team. And it's a tough performance. But in the Premier League, week in, week out, as we've seen, and we'll get to that, even the next game was a challenge for Liverpool too. Wasn't as easy as it seemed on paper, but again, like I said, Premier League is always a difficult task.
It is, and just the last thing before we kind of close the page on Arsenal here, I think that clean sheet might go a long ways because, a lot of people were, including us, were saying, that defense is one of the best in the league, if not the best in the world. And, the moment we said that, they went and shit their pants on live television for about 2.5 weeks. And so I feel like to get that clean sheet with Gabriel and Saliba and Ben White and co, that was a big confidence booster. And I think that might go a long way for their defense. Now, the pivot to Liverpool, we opened the scoring and they got that equalizer at halftime. And in my head, I was thinking, it's going to be the same shit all over again. we'll probably draw this match because I just don't think we'll be able to get a winner. But thank God Diego Jota stepped up, one of the most clinical finishers on Liverpool's roster, and he's needed a goal after coming back from injury, and it's good to see that he kind of bounced back today. I thought Cody Gakpo again had a really good performance. I'm liking what I'm seeing a lot from him after a couple months of so-so form, and even though we didn't get the clean sheet, a 3-1 win is a nice step in the right direction after a terrible 2 weeks.
Yeah, of course you get some big players back too, right? Trent comes on, gets some minutes,
nice free kick,
and I guess the biggest thing for me is yes, you get 3 goals and you start to see a little bit of that form maybe come back, and Jota we talked about is such an integral piece to this team. But the big piece for me and the concern, honestly, is just Mo Salah. And you're going to need him in the big moments coming down the stretch in this race. And he is just not in form right now. And that's got to be concerning from a Liverpool perspective. Again, 2 penalty kick goals in the last 4 or 5 games, but you expect more from him in the big moments. And we've seen him miss a lot of key chances that normally Mo Salah would put in the back of the net.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And he started 2023 hot, at the start of the season, and then he got injured, and then he went to AFCON and got injured again. And, since January of 2024, he's looked like an absolute shell of himself, and it's gotten bad because you used to never see Mohamed Salah subbed, benched, this and that, and Jurgen Klopp in big moments as of late, especially with this tough 2-week slate we've had, has hooked him twice. And that's just things that I'm not accustomed to seeing. It really shows that, Jurgen Klopp knows he's leaving. He doesn't give a shit anymore about, keeping up with the players. It's all about, I just want to win, and the best players are going to play. And that's what I've seen. And I think that Mohamed Salah's days are numbered at Liverpool here. And this is probably his last season. And although he's, been the best player for the last 5 or 7 years for Liverpool, I think that his form the last 4 months has been unacceptable. And when you talk about Premier League greats and all times, you got to have that resume. And I'm not loving how he's ending his career here at Liverpool, but I always will hold him in the highest regards.
Yeah, and now of course we'll get to predictions in the end of the show, but my thought for you is, where does this leave both Liverpool and Arsenal now? Manchester City get basically 2 games to watch you guys play. They don't play until Thursday again in the Premier League. Of course, we'll get to their FA Cup performance against Chelsea on the weekend. But where does this leave you guys and Arsenal, like I said, in the title race? And how do you feel now? Again, you guys leapfrogged them, but they kind of just sat back and got a little bit healthier, a little bit rested, and kind of watch what they have to do now. They know that they have to keep winning, which they knew anyway. But they get to kind of watch you guys do two performances versus kind of consistently at the same time.
I mean, I literally put on the dock, Arsenal and Liverpool leapfrog City, but for how long? Because it seems almost inevitable. I mean, especially City getting knocked out of the Champions League, which me and John talked about at length on Thursday's show, so go check that out. But I just, definitely them going and beating Chelsea in the FA Cup was a good thing for the neutral who's rooting against City. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think Arsenal now has a better chance to compete than Liverpool do, and I think it's only a matter of time. I mean, they have probably the easiest schedule, tied with Liverpool. Arsenal had the toughest. So it's going to be an interesting finish, especially with the games in hand that they do have. And you actually made a comment in the group chat earlier that games in hand are stupid and don't matter. But I feel like when it comes to City, it does matter because you just chalk it up as 3 points.
Yeah, and someone responded right away, and they were right to say it's not that it doesn't matter. It's if you're asking me, I would rather be the team with the points on the board.
Agreed.
Right? Because you got to. You're
looking down.
You're looking down,
yeah.
And you've got that done and dusted. And now it's the other team's chance to catch you. Now, granted, when it's Manchester City that's coming behind you, I think they prefer to have their games to play, and they know what they need to do. And if you're asking anybody else, I think that's a different conversation. But it's an interesting race, and of course, not an easy week for both of your teams. Well, not your teams, but the teams that are chasing, right? Chelsea play Arsenal tomorrow. Questionable whether that's an easy game or not, but the way Chelsea have been playing of late might be a little bit easier.
I'm going to say not
an easy game. And of course, Merseyside Derby on Wednesday. So this could be a huge week in the Premier League at the top of the table. And then, like I said, Liverpool or City don't even play until Thursday, and they could essentially almost kind of look at this table and say, if we take care of business against Brighton, we go back at the top of the table with another game in hand, and it's almost kind of over.
Well, if Chelsea beat Everton by 6, does that mean we should beat them by 12?
You would think, although, moving on to their game, they did have a bounce-back performance against Forest, and things, looking up a little bit for Sean Dyche and his men, but it's going to be kind of an interesting battle at this point. They needed this for the relegation, and they needed it at a big time, Daniel. They absolutely needed this one.
Yeah, and I didn't get to watch this game live, so I don't want to comment on how the match took place, but I at least heard about the VAR on 3 separate occasions, and I sure as shit saw the statement that Nottingham Forest put out. And obviously, as a team that feels slighted by the PGMOL and VAR, I do sympathize a little bit. But that statement was the biggest pick-me, wham statement I think I've ever seen. And no matter what you feel about the situation, you can't call the league corrupt. And that's what I felt like they literally said was, this league is bullshit and it's corrupt and it's not fair.
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit of a pity on me type of statement by the club. We were talking about in our group text. If a player, coach says it, totally fine. But for an official statement from the club to come out, a little bit above board for me.
You had a good comment too about the owner.
Yeah, I mean, again, the owner shouldn't be making those comments, and that's.
Well, it was a club, and you said this seems like the owner literally sent this in a text message, was like, post this.
Yeah, and again, that's just not how you should run a club. And I think 2 of the 3 were questionable. The third one, and of course, all 3 are involving Ashley Young, who probably feels like the luckiest man in Everton, in Liverpool right now, because, again, that third one absolutely should have been a penalty. No doubt about it. But I don't think it changes whether or not the VAR official was a Luton fan or not. I think they just missed it. But the other 2 you could definitely say are questionable.
Why not Everton fans?
Right.
Like, why Luton? Why do they have to, throw Luton in there? And, both of these teams have gotten point deductions. So the league obviously is not in good standing with either of these teams. So to make some stupid accusation like that for me is throw City in there, someone who's avoided punishment. Why pick on Luton out of all the teams you can name? Is I guess that's the team next to you, but I didn't really understand that pointing fingers. It feels like Forest feel the pressure. Oh,
and they're very concerned that they may not get promoted or stay in the league next year.
Yeah.
And that to me, that's a statement from a club that is really reeling and knows that they are in trouble.
Yeah.
For sure.
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, the one good thing about this match was, Everton were able to bounce back after a horrendous performance against Chelsea, like we mentioned before. Another good thing for me was Gio Reyna getting minutes. I called out that I didn't think he'd get minutes in this game because it was a very physical matchup, and he still got the start. How he played, you'll have to be the judge of that, but I'm so glad that he's actually finding consistent minutes here at Forest. And then to move on to Luton, who, are points back on Forest now, they get absolutely worked at home. And Luton's home has been the fortress that's been keeping them alive here. And Brentford, who hasn't exactly been in goal-scoring form, without Tony, put 5 past them. And that was, I think that might be the final nail in the coffin, if you will, on Luton.
Yeah, I mean, there's still only 2 points back for Forest. There's a lot to be played. There's Burnley Forest at the end of the season, so that could be a huge impact in that season game. I think the bigger story here is that Brentford are now pretty much safe. We were concerned for a little while with Thomas Frank and the way that the team was playing, but this win gets them 10 points from the drop. And, of course, we still don't know what's going to happen with all the point deductions and everything that's going on with the league. So Brentford, big win, 5 at Kenilworth Road, as you said. No easy task the way that Luton play there. But now you feel like Brentford can kind of take a sigh of relief. And Thomas Frank deserves it because he's had a tough season with the amount of injuries. Brentford is one of those teams, same with Luton, by the way, that have been just absolutely decimated by players being out.
Like everyone's been injured. I feel like the amount of games that we're all playing these days like is really starting to catch up. And I mean, if you're a team that has less than 4 injured senior players, like that's short of a miracle, to be honest. And it's good to see that Brentford. We've talked a lot about Brentford on this podcast, and the fact that they were able to put 5, against, it doesn't matter who the opponent is. I'm sure that's going to be a big, boost for Thomas Frank and believing his philosophy and how he's playing. And I'm sure that might give them a little bit of wind in their sails to finish the season on a strong note, maybe catch up to the people around them since they, like you said, have had a pretty terrible season. But I wanted to mention another, relegation team here with Burnley winning the battle of bad, because Sheffield and them played and Burnley absolutely crushed them, showing that, when they do play inferior opponents, like Vincent Kompany's men can play an attractive brand of football, which drew me to the conclusion that maybe if he was coaching a better side with that philosophy, it actually could work. And we've talked about Kompany, it's been a while, but we talked about Kompany being pragmatic and playing to the strength of his players, and he hasn't done that throughout this entire year. But I just imagine he had, a little bit of like a Brighton. He's been tipped for the Brighton job at the Zerbi leaves. Could he be successful in that role? And I'm thinking maybe so.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say that they're out of it at this point either. They're only 3 points back. They get Manchester United on Saturday, which is, well, we'll get to Manchester United later, but you could pick up points there. And then again, the last game of the season is that Forest game. And so if you can keep things kind of level, 3 points going into that game. Now, goal differential is not in their favor going to that one.
How
for
bad
sure.
Is it?
It's about 14 goals, negative 32 to negative about 18-ish for Forest. Both not very good, but there was a couple of games that Burnley just got decimated by. But again, if you can pick up a point against Manchester United this weekend, or even if you can somehow make a statement against Newcastle, probably Spurs on the road is going to be tough, but you can maybe squeak in and stay up, and who knows, we'll see what happens. And that last game of the season is going to be an epic clash if things play out the way it looks.
I couldn't agree more. One last quick storyline for the Premier League, as it was a great season here. Aston Villa get 6 on Spurs with a big win after against the Cherries, and Spurs are 6 points back now. They do have games in hand. That's how we spurred the games in hand conversation this weekend. Are you going to back Emery's men to get this done?
We talked about it with Ange Ball and the way that I feel that the stress of that is being put on the players. I also, if you look at Spurs' schedule, it's absolutely horrendous for them on the run-in. And yes, long answer, yes. I think Emery's men are going to be able to get it done. Again, their schedule just sits better for them. Spurs, have a gauntlet to finish. Still have a North London derby, Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester City. But that right there alone makes this task very difficult. Now, of course, they do have Burnley, Sheffield in between there, so they can pick up some points. But I do like what Unai Emery's done. And they had a little bit of a down period, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, or maybe it might have been a month ago, but they've ridden the ship a little bit, and I think they still find a way to secure that 4th spot. Now, it is 4. That's been confirmed. Italy gets the 5th spot for the Champions League, so Spurs have a lot of work to do, but they're not out of it. But I do like Unai Emery and what he's got available to him.
I think if you told any Spurs fan that they'd be playing, Europa League after losing Harry Kane and getting a new coach from Celtic, they'd probably take that at the start of the season. So I still think they'll take it at the end of the season. Now, they were first and unbeaten for a while.
Villa are still in European competition, so that may play a little bit of it. But again, I still like their chances.
Yeah, I'd agree. And they were first for a little bit, so obviously it has been a little. I don't even think you can call it a fall from grace because it's all positivity. But I'm definitely going to back Emery's men here. I mean, I was watching that Ollie Watkins, and I just think he's such a complete striker. And I mean, you got Diab, you got so many guys on that roster, and they're getting hot at the right time. So I'm going to back Villa here. But and I wanted to touch on one last quick topic. This Crystal Palace side that we're seeing right now, with Eze, with Elise, with Oliver Glasner, with Adam Wharton. I mean, me and Ewan talked about it a little bit, like probably a week ago. They put 5 past West Ham. They went and beat Liverpool at Anfield. I mean, Oliver Glasner has the boys in a good position, and it's just a damn shame because Eze and Elise couldn't get healthy to save their lives all season, and now we're seeing what Crystal Palace could have been in the Premier League, and they are a really fun side to watch. And I'm pretty disappointed that, both of them will probably leave in the summer, and we've been robbed this whole time of what Crystal Palace could have been.
Yeah.
But I guess they had Roy for like a minute.
And that's kind of where I was going, was that Crystal Palace, this is kind of where they are, right? This is what they want to be. For the last 5 or 6 seasons, they've been a 14 to 10 type of team. They obviously brought in Patrick Vieira, thought he was going to be the next kind of manager on the block.
Strasbourg still does, and it ain't working out for him.
Not working out for him. But then they revert back to going to Roy Hodgson, right? And that's, to me, when they made that switch back, that kind of solidified where I thought Crystal Palace were going to be. I think Oliver Glasner is a fantastic hire, and what he's been able to do is phenomenal. It's just a matter of will they make the investment going forward to make Crystal Palace go to that next level, or will they still be a mid-table team? And there's nothing wrong with that if that's your objective. And they're never really a mid-table. They're never really in the relegation battle. They're kind of just that no man's land of a team.
Well, they were before Glasner came in, but I mean, I don't know if a lot of our listeners know who Glasner is, but what he did at Frankfurt, believe they went to Europa Conference League final 2 years ago. Sold Muani for big money. He came out of nowhere. They sold a ton of players from that roster. I mean, if he can replicate what he did with Frankfurt, bringing them from a mid-table side, kind of like they were, into like a, outside shot, like almost like a Brighton, if you will. I think that's a very realistic thing, and they're going to get big money for Elise. They're going to get big money for Eze. And if they keep recruiting these young kids from the championship, as Ewan would say, are battle-tested, that have panned out every single one of them, they're going to be okay. And hopefully the next guys don't have an injury bug, kind of like Eze and Elise did, but I'm very bullish on their future, and just wanted to mention just like putting 5 past a Moyes side, who's like usually pretty sturdy at the back, was just a little bit of surprise. Mateta's playing great ball as a hold-up striker, and I just am very impressed.
Top half next season?
Depends on, like you mentioned, who they sign and who they sell, but I could...
Well, you're kind of saying that they're going to go that route.
Very realistic. Very realistic.
Okay.
I think I think 9th would be like a very good season for Palace. But now I wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on the FA Cup. We'll start with the biggest game with Chelsea versus Manchester City. Obviously, it's a tough way to go out if you're Chelsea. But I would be proud of the way they played, and obviously there was some controversy at the end with the handball, which is a handball. I'll save you the trouble of explaining that. But kind of, as a Chelsea fan, are you infuriated? Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you bitter? How Chelsea can show up to these big matches and walk the walk with the best of the best, but then they shit the bed against the bad teams.
Well, there's a lot to unpack on. Loaded question. If Nico Jackson is still on the roster on Saturday, or tomorrow on Tuesday, and then on Saturday, I'm going to be a little frustrated.
He's going to start. You know that, right?
He's definitely going to start because there's nobody else to start. I mean, if you're going to beat Manchester City, that's the time to do it. They definitely looked out of sorts. They looked sluggish after the Champions League fixtures against Real Madrid, which they went 120 minutes plus penalties. Kevin De Bruyne came out and said he couldn't finish the match because he was so tired. And you saw that in this match. And yes, 6 or 7 chances that Chelsea should have put away even before the penalty non-call. I don't understand how that's not called, but that's neither here nor there. I don't want to get into that. The team has improved, and I think that's something that I talked about with you from the beginning, is it's definitely progression.
But 2 weeks ago, before you took your hiatus, you were done with this team.
Oh, I still am.
So are you kind of back?
No, I'm definitely done with this side. I can definitely see us getting destroyed by Arsenal tomorrow. Even though you mentioned earlier it's going to be a tough game. Yeah, it probably will be, but we'll probably lose 2-0 or 3-1, and it'll still be frustrating. And then, we have a bad run-in still on the way home. This team is definitely getting better. It's a young team. We saw that with the situation with Everton and the penalty situation of who takes it at 5-0, 4-0. So this side has a lot to learn and a lot to grow into. Is Poch the guy to do it? Probably one more season. I don't think after what you've seen, you kind of get rid of him. Otherwise, it's like, what's the point of this whole project that Todd Bowley and the team have announced? So you have to see improvement next season, or by Christmas, winter break, it's got to be changes. But we'll see. We'll see.
I think top 6 would be a wonderful achievement for Chelsea.
And it's definitely possible.
It's possible.
It's definitely possible.
They're maybe not as a dreamer as I gave you credit for beforehand, but I think that you should, unlike most, I feel like a lot of people have been comparing Manchester United, which we'll get to in a second, and Chelsea in the same situation with the same managers, and a lot of people are like, sack both of them.
I don't think they're comparable at all.
I think a lot of people are looking at as apples to apples instead of apples to oranges, and I think if you were to choose one who should stay, I think Pochettino over Ten Hag every single day, including twice on Sundays.
Absolutely, but they are not the same situation. I mean, yes, financially, Chelsea spent
$1 billion,
and that's over multiple windows. So everyone calm down. It wasn't over one window. It was a lot of money, okay? But right behind us was Manchester United, and we bought young talent, whereas Manchester United paid for seasoned veterans and players that are internationals, stars, and they've shit the bed.
Yes.
And they've looked horrendous.
Yes.
They looked absolutely horrendous in the second half against Coventry, an 8th place championship side. And they probably should have lost the game, honestly. So it's
that offsides was ridiculous.
It's offside though. It is unfortunate. Next season with the new Arsene Wenger rule, that might not be offside. But for now, it's offside. But it just epitomizes how different of a project Chelsea and Manchester United are. And yes, Arsene Wenger rule would change the outcome of that game, but that game should never have been even remotely close regardless. And I think that just shows you where these two teams are. And Erik Ten Hag, if he hasn't been fired already on a Monday night, I don't know what he's still doing in Manchester.
Apparently he's on trial. He's a trialist for the club. I mean, you're up 3-0 chilling at halftime. To give up 3 consecutive goals is disgusting. I mean, Kobe Mainu has completely saved you a job, because Kobe Mainu has taken all the attention off of Erik Ten Hag being a shit coach, and that midfield was terrible. And he came in and has done a fantastic job, and that Christian Eriksen couldn't do. I mean, Casemiro can barely do these days. He's looking morbidly out there. Yeah. And it's just not good. I mean, Scott McTominay even has been getting on the score sheet, got on the score sheet in the FA Cup. Like, these kind of players are like the guys who have been saving Ten Hag's bacon. And yes, the injuries have been bad, but you cannot concede 3 in a row to Coventry. I don't care if you have academy kids. It's unacceptable.
Harry Maguire, post-game, credit to him for coming out there and saying some things that are factual and, sure. But to say that we were comfortable going to penalties against Coventry, that should tell you everything you need to know about where this Manchester United side are and what they are and what they've turned into in the last 4 or 5 seasons. Again, night and day where the two clubs are going. I foresee us jumping them in the table at some point, which hasn't been done in the last 4 or 5 seasons, as one of my Manchester United friends keeps reminding me. But
I'm sure they will.
This is the year that the two teams, definitely their trajectory on a different path.
Yeah, and I'm sure Harry Maguire didn't feel that way when Casemiro trotted up and took that shittiest pen. I think him and Bernardo Silva should fight for the death for shittiest pen I've ever seen in one
They called
league.
each other.
I'm sure they did. But, it was a great, to look back on Coventry City, what a fucking run it was. And Haji Wright, the man who stepped up for the big occasion.
Yes.
He's on the plane for Copa America for me. He's should go to like a Palace type team. Like he should find himself some top league minutes after not only how he's played in the championship, but how he's played in the FA Cup. Like I thought he's been fantastic. He's been the savior the whole way. And so I just wanted to give him his flowers as well before we move on to some Bundesliga action.
Yeah, and winner in the Manchester Derby? Is it close?
I don't know.
May 25th, so we'll have plenty of time, but just your gut reaction.
I don't know. Oh, sorry. Manchester City is going to thrash them.
We'll see. I feel that way too.
There might be some tired legs, though.
We'll see.
That's the only thing.
We'll see. But moving over to the Bundesliga, as you mentioned, Daniel, this story just never ends.
Ceases to amaze.
It's amazing and we talked about it a couple weeks ago, even offline, if maybe not when I was on the show, but this Bayer Leverkusen team just finds a way. And again, they continued it this week against Dortmund, and unbelievable.
Definitions of champions, teams that just get it done. If there's a will, there's a way. And it was a good chance. I mean, I saw the lineups against Dortmund, and it was a B lineup. And Dortmund needed, they needed to leapfrog Leipzig to get that Champions League spot. And I was pretty worried about the streak ending. Because at this point, it hasn't been done in so long. I kind of want the streak to stay alive. I love Xabi Alonso. I love the whole Leverkusen team. And Füllkrug in the 85th minute, goes up. And I'm thinking, all right, we'll see. I'm not even going to... I feel like don't even watch this game until stoppage time because that's when Bayer Leverkusen come alive. And sure shit, I think it was Josip Stanisic, the Bayern loanee, comes up big with a nice flick on the near post for the corner to give them the leveler and to give Dortmund absolute gut punch at the last minute.
I was going to say an absolute gut punch because they needed this result badly.
Leipzig won.
Leipzig did win. Now they're 2 points behind in that race for fourth. And you wondered...
Did they get fifth?
They did get fifth. Well, they won't get the fifth spot. It's Italy that got it. It's just top four.
Wow.
So they will need to fight for that fourth spot. You almost felt sorry for Dortmund that they had to play a team that probably showed up half drunk to the stadium. If I'm honest, the scenes that came out of Bayer Leverkusen for winning the title for the first time in the club's history were remarkable. You're obviously playing for an undefeated season across the board, so you just wondered. Of course, they're still in Polkai Cup. They're still in Europa League. They probably prioritize those two competitions now after winning Meisterschalen. So the fact that they were still able to get that result and stay undefeated in the league, that's a testament to what Xavi is building there, and the as we call it, Liverpool and Klopp, the mentality monsters that he's trying to set and say, hey, listen, we are the champions, but we're not done yet. We want to go undefeated in this league, and we want to win every game or at least not lose and set that standard here going forward.
And you mentioned that. So they play Stuttgart, then they play Roma in the Europa League, then they play Frankfurt. Then a nice easy game against Bochum after the second leg of Roma, Augsburg, and then the Polkai final against Kaiserslautern. So, if they were to slip up in the Bundesliga, it'd probably be the Stuttgart or Frankfurt game. They are home for the Stuttgart game, but they have those Europa Leagues in between the Frankfurt and that game. So I could see them slipping up and getting their first loss of the season, but I see them going the distance in Europa League. I mean, we saw how Roma played today, which we'll get to in a second. And, I mean, they're playing a second league Bundesliga team for the Polkai, which, what a story. But they're going to have their way with them, unfortunately.
They will. And you do feel like that's going to happen. And, of course, the rest of the table is going to kind of play out as it does. You mentioned Stuttgart. They're pretty secure in that third spot. They did slip, but I feel pretty confident in third. It will be an interesting battle between, like I said, Dortmund and RB Leipzig for that fourth spot. Of course, Dortmund could also take care of it themselves if they get into the final, beating PSG, and they get a secured spot as a finalist. You don't want to put that as your only option, so they'll still be trying to fight. But Daniel, for me, the bottom of the Bundesliga is still a little bit up in the air. Mainz and 27 points with Bochum. You mentioned Bochum being kind of bottom table and an easy win for for Bayer Leverkusen, I don't know, because that's going to be a battle right there to get out of that relegation playoff match in the Bundesliga. I think we're pretty confident that Darmstadt and Cologne are probably going down, and you're fighting for that promotion, that spot right there.
I think that Cologne should get instant relegation for losing this weekend at home to Darmstadt. I mean, what a disgrace. I mean, we're talking about a Mainz. Mainz went to Darmstadt 2 weeks ago and beat them 5-0, and then Cologne just lost. So the Cologne's down bad, Darmstadt even more down bad. But Mainz, they tied again this weekend somehow against Freiburg. Was it Freiburg? I can't even remember. It was Freiburg. I was right. Okay. And that's a good result for them.
Great result.
I'm back in Mainz all the way here. I mean, I think it's Ericsson's the coach name with the long hair tucked between his ears. He's got the boys believing here. And I think Mainz just are the hotter side right now. And Bochum have not been in good form. So I'm feeling pretty good about them.
Now, if you lived under a rock this past weekend, you would miss arguably the biggest game maybe in the world of football, Daniel. And we had some drama in this one. Of course, we're talking about El Clasico, Barcelona versus Real Madrid, the final El Clasico of the season. And it didn't disappoint. It did not disappoint. Everything from goals to VAR to no goal line technology, which we'll get to in a second.
I didn't even know they didn't have goal line technology.
They do not have goal line technology in La Liga, but the biggest storyline of the day is that, of course, Real Madrid win this game and probably take the advantage they probably take the result of La Liga with Jude Bellingham scoring the winning goal in extra time. That pretty much seals it for me and La Liga.
That is correct. And, of course, it had to be Jude to do it. I mean, I don't know if Joselu meant to dummy the ball or he just whiffed, but it happened to fall right to him. The big guys showed up. Vinicius converted the penalty. Unlikely heroes for Barcelona with Fermin Lopez stepping up and a ball just happens to fall to him in the 6-yard box. But I thought Barcelona actually played pretty well in this. This is Real Madrid's 4th straight win in El Clasico, which is a very abysmal stat for Barcelona fans. And I was really hoping, I knew the league was probably done, but you want this not to be a one-sided rivalry, which we've started to see a lot with these big, famous rivalries, that they're sometimes, like Liverpool-Everton, for example, terrible example, but completely one-sided, where it's not even that big of a derby anymore. You'd like to see, Barcelona shock the world, and they went up first with Christensen back post header, and I was kind of thinking maybe there'd be a shot that they could do it.
Yeah, and it's disappointing because Barcelona have played El Clasico really well, both games. They probably should have won the first one.
Yeah.
They had the lead in this one, and again, you mentioned the league is over, but if you really look at it on paper, if they win both of these games, it's a race, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of hope that they were playing to kind of have something to play for the rest of the season. That's not going to be the case. But you look at the way that the game was played out. Barcelona were on the front foot, and Real Madrid played exactly the same way that they played against Manchester City. Just counterattack, and of course, when you have Vinicius Jr. who can do that and do what he does, why not, right? He played a little bit more central, which he's going to have to grow into and learn how to play, especially with Kylian Mbappe coming in, and we saw that as well during the Champions League game against Manchester City. But again, it is what it is, and Carlo Ancelotti found a way again to just continually get the best of this Real Madrid side. And you and Ewan have talked about all season that this is just a collection of talent, but yet they still find a way.
It is, and I don't know how they do it. I feel like if they didn't sign Jude Bellingham, maybe we're having a completely different conversation and discourse.
Best signing of the season?
In the whole world? For sure.
Got to be up there, right?
I mean, I don't think... I saw it on Twitter. It said Lowe, who reports on the La Liga, he's like a Brit, and he said that he hadn't, just looking back, like he hadn't seen a signing do what Jude's done in his first year since Di Stefano. And I'm too young to even know who that is.
You are too young to know who that is.
But I've heard about him, and I've heard good things. So, in theory, I would just say, I think it's fair to say that he has been the signing of the season. maybe if Bayern won some silverware, you could talk about Harry Kane in the same light, but just I don't think you could at this rate how Bayern are. But yeah, no, I would say that. Another storyline I wanted to get to, you especially, but me too as well, I'll take credit, have been sleeping on Girona for a while now. And they won. Atletico lost to Alaves, shockingly. And Atleti tied Granada, a terrible side. So the gap is there for Girona to get it done. We were maybe believing here after Atletico beat them last weekend. But now Girona get a win and they slip up. That's a long hill to climb to catch up to them.
Yeah, it feels almost out of reach. 7 points clear. It comes down to just this Atleti side was just inconsistent, right? We've talked about that with Dortmund as well. And from a Diego Simeone's men perspective, it's just surprising. You thought they would have a bounce back performance after the midweek game against Dortmund, and they lose. And it's just where they are right now. It's very surprising. They did.
I actually watched that game, and it looked. There was no inspiration. They did not look interested either. They looked like, all right, this season's over. Maybe we'll get top 4 and let's just pack it up and go on vacation. There was no fight. And for a Simeone side, that's the opposite of the DNA he has. So it's pretty shocked at just the vibes within the game. Alaves is not a great team. They're not really playing for anything. This was a great opportunity to catch up to Girona. I'm just disappointed. And then when it comes to Atleti at home, they had their chances, just couldn't convert. But they wanted it, and you could say that you could tell that game hurt, that draw.
Yeah, I guess the bigger question now is Atleti or Athletic Club? Who do you take? Because there are only 3 points between those two teams, and I think, like we said, Girona at 7 points feels pretty clear to kind of lock at least one of those spots. Maybe not both, maybe not third, but either way, they're going to be in the Champions League. So who gets that last spot?
It's hard to back Valverde versus Simeone because you never want to count out Simeone, but Valverde is just such a fantastic, underrated coach. I feel like Atletico have more to play for since Athletic Bilbao won the Copa del Rey, at least. So I'm going to back Atletico here because they literally have to get Champions League or this could be very bad. I mean, I can't remember the last time Atletico were in the Europa League.
Talking about champions and Champions League, a team that will definitely be in the Champions League and champions, Daniel. And they secured it pretty much this weekend, or today, essentially, against their arch rival, is Inter Milan in Serie A, beating AC Milan. They're now essentially locked and confirmed the champions this season. Thoughts on probably the most lopsided league that we had all season. We called this one basically in January almost, yeah. It feels like. But now I feel like the actual nails in the coffin officially making it champions of the Scudetto.
It seems like Inter almost stumbled on purpose against Calgary last weekend with the draw so they could do this to AC Milan, which is a bit cruel. But Pioli, the second game in a row, tinkered with his lineup, played Leal through the 9, which didn't make any sense to me. And Inter was just the better side until the 70th minute, and they sat back and invited pressure. That's when Milan got the goal. Tomori got the goal late. But this game had everything. It had fights, had some beautiful goals, and they got to crown it against their arch rivals, like you mentioned. That's probably the ideal way to finish it.
Yeah, I would actually, if you can draw it up any way, that would be how you want to do it, right? You have bragging rights, ultimate bragging rights.
They share the stadium already. Painted blue.
Painted blue today, even though it was red because they were technically home.
Yeah.
But it felt like this was inevitable. Like we said. And it had some heat to it. 2 red cards late in the game. 3 red cards, technically. But it definitely felt like a rivalry that AC Milan said, you know what? We know you got it this year, but you're not going to go down lightly. We're going to be back next season for sure.
And we'll see. I mean, I think Pioli has come out that Pioli is gone. So apparently he's tipped to go to Napoli, which we'll see if that works out. I actually like that move a lot for Napoli and Pioli. But the manager pool this year has shrunk. And, I get wanting to move on from Pioli, but you got to have someone pretty decent lined up. And I haven't seen a good enough name that would intrigue me to make me want to fire Pioli. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the offseason. But and if Leao stays, obviously. But they've built a pretty good squad, so we'll see if they'll be able to kind of. They won, 3 years ago? We'll see if they can, come back and actually challenge. I mean, second place is still a good achievement in terms of just how good this Inter side was.
It just sucks that it's your arch rival that is ahead of you.
For sure.
But you mentioned Girona was a nice surprise, getting third place in La Liga. A huge surprise in Serie A, and it feels like they're pretty much locked into a Champions League spot, Daniel, is Bologna, who got a big result today against Roma and basically secured that fourth spot in the Serie A. Could he potentially still catch Juventus, only 2 points back? Any takeaways from this one? Of course, Thiago Motta has done a phenomenal job, and De Rossi came in and did a good job for Roma too, but a little bit too much to ask to get done at the late end of the season.
Yeah, well, simple as that. Thiago Motta outclassed De Rossi today. And De Rossi hasn't been outclassed many times this season in terms of him being new to the Serie A. But Lewis Ferguson, arguably Atalanta's first or second best player on the entire roster towards ACL is out for the season. So I was thinking maybe that, would really stunt their growth in terms of this top four push. And Jonathan Xerxes, Salamakers, Calafori in the back completely proved me wrong and just humbled Roma at home today. And that was probably the most shocking result I've seen. I was expecting, maybe a draw. But to beat, Roma 3-1, who's, gone on a run in the Europa League, has gone on a run since Jose Mourinho left, it was a little bit surprising.
By the way, of course, as we mentioned a couple times now, Roma still in a decent position as Italy will get that fifth Champions League spot, currently sitting in fifth. They do have Atalanta right behind them, 2 points back, and so they've been a pick of mine, and they obviously had a pretty impressive performance in Europa League against your Liverpool.
They did.
Any concern if you're Roma, or do you feel confident that they can hang on? Again, only 2 points clear, or 1 point ahead of Atalanta with about 4 or 5 games left to go here.
Go ahead and flip a coin. Both are in Europa League competition. Depends on probably who gets knocked out first. I know Roma plays Bayer Leverkusen, so logically speaking, I would say Roma have more of a chance to get knocked out. I can't remember. I think Atalanta drew the winner of Marseille-Benfica, which I'm blanking on who actually won that.
Marseille won that one.
Marseille?
Yeah.
That's an interesting... I think they're going to go farther than Roma, though. So I would say Roma should feel safe here, but it really is depending on their... Atalanta's very hot right now, and Catalare just got back from injury. I don't know. That's a tough one. What do you think?
I like their schedule. They have Fiorentina, Empoli, the team I can't pronounce, Salernitana. There we go. Thank you. Always here. And then they do a big matchup in May where they do play each other. So that will be the ultimate decider.
It's at Atalanta, too.
It's at Atalanta. So that's going to be a huge one. And then Lecce and Torino to finish for Atalanta. So
tough schedule, though.
Very tough schedule, especially with European. Like you mentioned, I think whoever gets out first can focus on that last spot. Now, of course, if you win Europa, that guarantees you a spot in Champions League. But similar to what we mentioned with Dortmund, you don't want to depend on that as your way in. So I do think Atalanta has, and I've been very high on them all season. I think they sneak in. I think they sneak in.
I hope so. I mean, the fact that they beat Liverpool is all the ammo I need to believe in these guys. And Gasperini is a fantastic manager. That's a name that Milan should go for, Gasperini. But yeah, no, it's been great. And then we'll get to go ahead and get to predictions here since we are short on time. And we will not be doing a Thursday episode just because of the schedule and just how busy we've been as people who have jobs. But we're gonna predict all the biggest games for this week and the weekend here, starting with your dear Chelsea versus Arsenal. I believe it's at the Emirates. You can correct me if I'm wrong. What's the vibe?
The vibe check is Arsenal are going to win this game, probably 2-1. But I think we play tough, but I think Arsenal have too much right now for this squad. You mentioned Chelsea played better against tougher opponents, which is why I still think they make it a game, but Arsenal stay in the race, 2-1.
Got to back Arsenal at the Emirates here. I'm thinking with your leaky defense, but it didn't look so leaky against Manchester City. I'm going to go 3-2. Arsenal win.
Now, you have a stake in this one, so I'm going to ask you, which is usually not the case. Merseyside derby, Liverpool, Everton. Who do you got?
This could be the game that we need to just blow the doors off Everton, which I don't think will happen. But I think a nice 3-0 win would make me happy and help us spur us on to win the title. So I'm going to go 3-0.
Okay. Moving into...
What do you think?
I think Everton want to be a spoiler. That would be the ultimate way for them to kind of have one last moment in the season. I'm going to go... I don't want to just say this just because you're a Liverpool fan.
Stick your neck out here.
I think it's 1-1. Wow. I'll say 1-1 draw, and I think that pretty much takes Liverpool out of the title race after that.
I'd agree. We have Atleti Bilbao, the race for fourth here. This could be a big decider, like we mentioned just a couple minutes ago. Are you going to back Atleti or Athletic Bilbao, kind of going right back to our conversation?
I've been very impressed with Athletic Club Bilbao. Of course, they won Copa del Rey as well, which the scenes there, if you haven't seen those images, phenomenal. 1 million people lining the river with the trophy. Give me Bilbao. I just cannot take Atleti this season with the inconsistency, and I think Bilbao get that fourth spot in Syria in La Liga for Champions League next year.
Oh man, this is a tough one. I'm gonna do a 2-2 draw here. I can't back aside here. We got Leipzig versus Dortmund. Another race for top four here.
Big weekend. Big week of games.
Good slate. Leipzig's at home. Dortmund, still alive in the Champions League. Do they rest guys here, or
you can't rest guys here? This is too important. Like we said, you got to at least secure a spot. You're playing arguably you're not the favorite in your leg against PSG.
That is
and so for me, but again, Borussia Dortmund are just so inconsistent. Leipzig have been playing much better. I'll take 2-1 Leipzig, and I think they squash Terzic's men of a chance at top four.
I'm going to do 2-2 here. I can't pick a side either.
A lot of draws.
I've been doing that a lot.
I know you have been.
I don't like it.
I know.
Leverkusen versus Stuttgart. Another good chance for Stuttgart to play spoilers here, and after their amazing season, they did drop points. Are we going to back Stuttgart off a loss?
I'm going to take Stuttgart. At some point, Bayer Leverkusen's run is going to end.
You said that all season.
I have, but this is over now. That was for the title. This is just kind of icing on the cake. I do think Stuttgart, this is a big game for Stuttgart. Give me Stuttgart 2-1.
I can't do another draw. That'd be a cop-out. I'm going to go 2-1 Bayer Leverkusen. I think they're going to watch a lot of film on how Bremen broke Stuttgart down, and I think they should be able to find some answers if they don't rest their entire team like they did this weekend. Juve Milan. I guess this game doesn't matter as much anymore because second and first is basically, solid. But Bologna, maybe off chance they could catch up to Juventus here.
Bologna are big Milan fans in this one.
They are.
I think Milan getting just beaten down today, and then some red cards at the end of that one. I think Juve get a big win here, 2-0. And they separate themselves from Bologna, who's still, like I said, getting the Champions League, but not in third place.
Theo Hernandez is a big loss for Milan, but I can't back Allegri.
I mean, it's hard, but
soccer
I
terrorism
know
that he plays.
But I'll take the 2-0.
I'm gonna have to do 1-1 just because this game this will not be watched. I'm just gonna let you know that. And then last on the list this weekend we have Spurs, Arsenal. Arsenal 2 tough games in a row. A North London derby here at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
We'll know if Arsenal can go the distance this week.
We'll know if Spurs can get top 4.
That's true as well. But Arsenal will know if they can finish the race out and give City a chance or at least a fight. In this one, though, I think Ange gets the better of Arteta. I think 2-1 Spurs in a really fun, open contest, back and forth. You'll start to see that Arsenal firepower try and get going, and Spurs would love that type of game, and so I think 2-1 Spurs.
God, these are tough ones. I'm gonna back Arsenal win 1-0. 1-0. That's my prediction. which is boring. I think it'll be a little cagey. I think Arsenal, it depends on really how the game against Chelsea goes, and if it's like they really stretch out for it. But that is the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening and following along this entire time. If you're listening on podcast version, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating and download the episode. If you're listening on YouTube, subscribe and like, and follow us on Twitter at Fulltime Roundup and TikTok at Fulltime Roundup. Thank you so much.